All right, it is June 28th, 2013. I'm sitting with William Rippy Jr. It will be the third interview for the project. All right. Thank you again, Bill, for meeting. I really appreciate it, especially on such short notice, just coming up yesterday. First off, I just was wondering if you could just tell me a little bit about your background, where you came from, born and raised in Craig.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Craig.
Okay.
I was born in 1935. I'm only 77. I'll be 78 in October.
Oh, okay, okay.
So, yes, I was born and raised here.
Okay, and you stayed here the entire time?
No. Of course, I was in the service.
Right.
In the service in 55.
Okay.
And got out in 59. And I ended up pretty much in the oil field, so I've traveled almost all the western states,
oh,
into
wow.
Texas, and doing work. We were pretty much a contractor.
Okay.
We could go back to the Craig Hide and Fern, Craig Steel and Salvage.
That sounds good.
It was down there by the railroad, and I pretty much grew up down there as a little kid, and we, I'd say we all the time, but I was involved as I got older. They had a big salvage yard.
Okay.
And they also bought hides, and beef hides, sheep belts, wool, and everything you can think of in a junk business, junk batteries, metals. It was a regular salvage yard. And part of the deal down there was at the warehouse was that you needed to use the railroad to keep the lease,
right,
and so forth. And so we shipped a lot of scrap iron out of here. Excuse me. I remember during the Korean War, we shipped a lot of scrap iron. Well, let's go back to the Second World War.
Okay.
I think that's a little more interesting. When they were inducting people into the service for that, my dad had a partner by the name of Bob Hawkins, or Robert Hawkins, as he was known here. And in fact, the Hawkinses and him and his dad had gotten my dad into the business with him. And during the war, Bob Hawkins had went in. He was a pilot. He had his own plane here. And he, I might as well make the story good.
Oh, of course.
They were buying fur back in those days, and beaver were illegal to trap and buy in Colorado. And so they bootlegged them.
Right.
And they would actually use his plane to fly them out of here and fly them into Wyoming where they could, and it was an open cockpit type plane. And he could land in the fields up there and get rid of the beaver and so forth. There was a lot of interesting things happening over the bootlegging of fur back in those days.
Okay.
And anyway, they used to ship the fur to New York. In some way, the feds picked up on it back there and came back to him and arrested him for it. And in those days, it was like an offense like that was either go to prison or go to join the military. Well, here he was already a pilot, so he went right in. And then he went further to train people on what they call the Alaska Hop. He trained pilots on how to fly from the United States up to Fairbanks and so forth.
Okay.
And he even stayed up there after the war and bought fur at the Eskimo camps all over that country. And then he finally came on back down. But in the meantime, my dad was told that if he would, as long as he was shipping scrap iron, he wouldn't have to go into service. And back in those days, it was hard work. You loaded everything by hand. It was pretty tough.
Right.
But he shipped a lot of scrap iron. He finally got tired of it and went down and told the old kid down here that was in charge of inducting everybody he wasn't going to load any more scrap iron. About 2 weeks later, he was in the service. They took him out of here.
Very quickly.
Very quickly. But it was serious business. But that's kind of kind of a quick rundown. And anyway, he didn't go overseas, but he spent his all of his service in the States.
Oh, okay.
And he was involved in working with German prisoners and stuff like that they had over here. And he used to tell me, he said, you know, those guys didn't want to go back over there. They wanted to stay here.
Right.
And maybe some did, I don't know. But anyway, when he got out, and then his partner and him, during the time they were gone, my mother and his partner's wife kept the warehouse open down here, and they would buy a few items and so forth. They kept it open best they could. And then later, and as I was growing up, I spent all my time down there.
Right.
Every bit, all the time I could. And I watched, back then there was a lot of stockyards down there where they loaded cattle and sheep, and I can remember seeing wool bags lined up along the railroad track. It looked like to me for a mile down there. It probably wasn't that long, but they were being shipped out by the rail and so forth. And I always loved to watch those old steam trains out there when I was a kid growing up. And then as I got older, then I would help down there, and I helped load scrap iron. Grew up, it was my job, even going to school and so forth, and loading junk batteries on cars and beef hides. And at one time, supposedly Craig was one of the biggest wool shipping centers in the world.
Yeah.
That I'd rather say it was the United States, but on the other hand, I've seen different things that said it was the world. But it was big.
Right.
This is where the railroad ended. And there was a lot of big sheep companies all around here. So they bring their wool in here to be shipped. And the other thing, we bought game skins.
Okay.
And at one time, my dad and his partner were probably the biggest game skin dealers in the West. But what made them that was they had a lot of small dealers dealing for them all out through Montana and Wyoming, Utah and New Mexico, and gather them all up. And we shipped a lot of game skins out here by rail. And we trucked a lot out too. But I suppose one thing I do remember, loading a lot of scrap iron during the Korean War. I was too young to go in then.
Right.
And boy, we did a lot of that. Days like today, it's 94 or something like that out there. It was hot.
Right.
Down there.
Right.
And as we went along, then I joined the service. And I spent 4 years, and then when I came out, Vietnam, we had Korea, Vietnam came along, and I'd already started a family, so they give me a discharge where I didn't have to go back in.
Oh, okay.
So I missed that, thank God.
Yeah.
But about the time that, while I was in the service, my dad and his partner had made a lot of money in this scrap business, and of course they sold new steel down here too. And everything they could make a buck at, they sold or bought. And they had made enough money to start looking around for something else. So they decided to get in the oil business.
Okay.
And my brother, I only had one sibling, my brother. He never went in the service, but he stayed here and he learned how to run a cable tool rig. Which, you know what a cable tool rig is?
I think I know, but
well, that was probably one of the earlier drilling rigs where they actually just have a big bit on the end of a cable and they swing it up and down.
Okay.
So they had a cable tool rig, so they decided to do some of their own drilling. And there was times when I went and helped him when I was home or worked on him and so forth. But they made a few wells, and they made some money in the business, but they stuck all of it back in the ground too. That's usually what happens with a lot of oil people.
Right.
And so they went along, but when I got out of the service, they decided they wanted, since they were in the salvage business, they wanted to get into it more so by getting into what we call the plugging end of it, the casing pulling business and so forth. And the old holes that are dry and no good, why we'd go out and plug them. And there you dealt with the BLM and the state and so forth on plugging holes. But we retrieve all the casing out and tubing and all the and then that stuff would be sold.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of it went back in oil wells and so forth. And a lot of it's still out here being used by ranchers and farmers for fences and stuff like that.
Right.
So that's still around, but that's kind of the way I got started in the oil field, was they decided that was a good place for me to go.
Okay.
So I ended up in the casing pulling business, and God, I was everywhere. I was, well, like I say, I've operated in Kansas, and of course all over Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, and Wyoming, Montana. Nothing in Idaho I ever did. Nebraska, I did some in there. So it took me everywhere.
Right.
So I've seen quite a bit of oil field from the old days.
Okay.
That I'm kind of getting ahead of myself too here, but I want to go back to when I was a kid down on the railroad down there.
Okay.
When they had hiding for a business was going, and I got to know a lot of the people that worked on the railroad. The engineers would come in. They'd come in from Yampa and Oak Creek or wherever they lived, and they'd come up and go back. And they were always friendly folks. They'd always come in the warehouse to visit with my dad, and I'd be around there. And at one time, my dad and his partner run a poker game in there. And they and a lot of the old businessmen around Craig knew about the poker game, and they'd go down there and play poker.
Right.
And so would the railroad people. They loved it. There was one thing railroad people loved to do was play poker. And I'll always remember that table that's set in there. I wasn't allowed to touch it. We were pretty little. But I'll always remember it. And we were never allowed to touch anything on there or look in the drawers where all the cards were at, the poker chips. And my dad and his partner never played poker.
Oh.
They had a guy run the game, and they took a rake off. And they made money doing that. And there was always a crowd down there. And I don't know how many years they run that, but several years.
Right.
Before they probably got shut down or something. But I was always amazed at how everybody was always looking for a poker game.
Right.
And then in the later years, when I used to go on the road, well, from 16 years old up till I went into service, buying hides and fur and stuff like that all over the country. And that was kind of typical because the ranchers always looked forward to the hide buyer coming by and dropping into his place. And he'd have a hide or two to sell, or some horsehair, or, just anything, or an old junk battery. And I had friends down in Bond where the railroad would come through down there, and there's a roundhouse down there is what I would call it. And God, I was only like 16, 17 years old. I used to go in there and play poker with those guys and the local ranchers around there. And they'd let me play as long as I had money.
Right.
Yeah, but I enjoyed it. But it was fun thinking back on all those times.
Yeah.
And that, let me see where I'm going with all that.
That's all right.
But, well, one time when I believe there was a time when they were trying to stop like the clubs and so forth from slot machines and so forth around here, and they had to get rid of them. My dad and his partner did pick up a lot of them, and they were supposed to take them apart to get the metals out of them and stuff.
Right.
Well, they stored them all underneath their warehouse down there, and I used to go down there and look at those, and to this day I never knew what happened to all those. But I think they had the idea maybe they'd start up again, they'd use them, but that never happened.
Right.
But so that's kind of, Craig was a good town to live in. It really was.
Right.
I don't know whether Jan told you, but they got me to talk to the second grade class here.
Right. They mentioned that.
Yeah. And you know what really amazed me? After it was all over with, and they were asking questions, the kids, the one thing they wanted to know, they said, "What did you do for fun when you were growing up?"
Right.
That amazed me. You know, and I had to think about that for a little bit
Mhm.
because it's a whole different world today.
Right.
You know, everything was wide open. We took care of ourselves. If we didn't, somebody was talking to us real hard.
Right.
And I mentioned something about when in the wintertime we would fill big ponds with water and let it freeze over, and we had a place to ice skate and so forth.
Mhm.
And one little girl asked me, she said, "Who was your coach for ice skating and stuff?"
Right.
Yeah, I never give it any thought.
Uh-huh.
But in today's world, it's a whole different world.
Right.
They got instructors, they got coaches, so they don't have the freedom we did.
Okay.
And there's probably and there's a good reason for it. It's more people and
Right.
things are a lot different out there. When we were growing up, why? I'm going to say well, to me, we were in a better world than they are today.
Mhm.
Except there's nothing wrong with this world today, neither.
Right.
Lots of good people in it,
Right.
and lots of good kids. But I was amazed that they would ask that question, what did you do for fun?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I see what you're saying. You're kind of talking about something that I was going to ask you about anyway, is change in recreation in Craig.
Mhm.
How did you know, what I was going to ask later on, we can come back to this, but as you're working and going through in your different capacities, different jobs you're working, what did you do to unwind? What did you do to relax? And again, we can talk about that later. But
Yeah.
it is very interesting.
Well, it was, I can't say it was more open. I seen a friendlier time back then,
Mhm.
where your law enforcement people were a lot more friendlier.
Right.
But today they have to put up with, all the drugs out there, and it's a tough deal.
Right.
So they can't afford to be too friendly all the time.
Right.
They got to be careful. Well, I've got two grandsons that are cops. One's a cop in Denver,
Mhm.
and he just resigned there. He's going to go to Wyoming, and the other one's a cop in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Mhm.
Both brothers. And I'm amazed that they're doing that. God, they went through college, got great degrees and everything, but
Right.
they like what they're doing.
That's good.
But it's a different world. I visit with them a lot on it,
Right.
and I can see why it should change.
Right.
I guess I'm kind of repeating myself, but
No, not at all.
we knew we had to respect the law and everything here.
Of course.
But like I say, it was a whole different time. It was kind of more relaxing, and if you got in a little trouble, the law would take you home. They
Right.
didn't just throw you in jail.
Right.
But that's different today,
Right.
and it's kind of scary.
Mhm.
And I guess I can see why you need more supervision over the kids today because of the things that they got. They got stuff out there that are way worse than we had.
Mhm.
I mean, we grew up, we could shoot guns. Probably liquor was the worst thing we got a hold of, and we'd all try that,
Mhm.
or maybe smoking or something. But we didn't know drugs. In fact, even after I went into the service, I really did not know anything about drugs.
Mhm.
And it was later when I got home that things started kind of showing up. It was in there, or it was in around us, but I didn't know much about it at all.
Right.
Thank God for that.
Right.
So that's a big change.
The drug use, or
oh yeah, the drug thing to me is really scary, and that's a big change.
right.
Of course, it's been coming on for a long time.
And that's something you've seen in Craig.
Oh yeah.
Craig.
Yeah. Well, recently they've had two or three big drug busts here on the meth.
Wow.
And I have no idea. I know that meth has to be horrible stuff.
Mhm.
Well, there was one in the paper this morning where they picked up some. So yeah, it's here,
Wow.
and that's scary.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I left here. I moved to Grand Junction. Let's see, we've been back about 15 years,
Mhm.
and we came back here, but I still love the small town atmosphere. We just had some friends over from Denver.
Mhm.
They spent about 3 or 4 days here, and they were so relaxed.
Right.
Yeah, because they live up in the northern part of Denver, and it's just traffic all the time and everything. You know what I'm talking about. You've been to those places.
Yeah.
They were so relaxed. They left this morning. They said, we'll probably be back within a month or two. I said, we loved it.
Yeah.
But they come over all the time. But all they could do is just sit around and talk about how relaxing and quiet it was.
Yeah.
And I've got some little schnauzers, dogs.
Yeah.
I'll drive around town, and nobody gives me a bad time about driving slow, just looking around.
Right.
I couldn't do that in Denver. Even Grand Junction today, you couldn't do it.
Right.
But I can here.
Right.
So that's why I'm here, back here.
Still the small town feel.
Sure,
Okay.
it is. And I don't know near the people I used to know here, because there is a lot more people. Of course, there's a lot of younger ones and so forth.
Right.
But it's kind of fun getting around some of the older guys. And we talk about it all the time.
Right. I interviewed a couple this morning, and they said that that's one of the big changes. She grew up here and came back after college, and she said that one of the big things that she noticed is the change in the people.
Yeah.
Whereas before you could go to the grocery store and you'd know basically everyone. She said you go today and you don't know anyone.
No, that's true. You really don't. But still isn't crowded. I eventually left what we call the Craig Hyden Prairie, Craig Steel and Salvage, and started my own business in the oil field.
Oh, okay.
And I did that in the early 60s.
Okay.
And, of course, they were supporting me, my dad and his partner,
Right.
a lot. And I started pulling casing, also working on wells. And I've even been in business where we actually drilled them and so forth. And then I got into what we call a roustabout business. It's mostly the laborers and the construction part of it.
Right.
And I had a lot of people working for me there. And we were here doing that for a long time. And I waited till my kids were, my wife now, Anna is my second wife, and she had 3 boys, and then I had 2 boys and a girl. So we raised all 6 of those kids. And I pretty much waited till they were all out of school before I got back into what we call a casing pulling business or well plugging.
Right.
Because that one, you do a lot of traveling.
Right.
And so I pretty well waited for them.
Thank you.
Where have you been?
Thank you. Okay. But you waited for them.
Yeah, I waited pretty much for them to get out, and then I started the other business. But I still stayed in the construction business, but I got into this recovering casing, and doing that, it's pretty hard to do today, but we would find some old wells that could still produce, and we would take them over and own them ourselves and produce them. And that works out pretty good. What happens there is a company, it costs a lot of money to plug a hole, and they, if you would take over the bonding to plug it yourself, you could have the hole and go ahead and produce it yourself.
Right.
And that's worked out pretty good. I don't have very much anymore, but I've had a few wells that were pretty good over the years and helped along.
Right.
Boy, anything would help out today with the price of oil. God almighty.
Yeah.
It's really up there because a lot of that plugging, when I was plugging wells, I've seen oil down as low as $2 a barrel,
Wow.
It's a big jump. But it does cost a lot of money to drill a well today, too. Way, way, way more than it used to. And we ended up moving to Grand Junction. And that was during the boom of about the 70s.
Okay.
That everybody seen. Grand Junction was going to be the oil field hub of the western part of this country. That was their thought all the time.
Right.
Well, it did get pretty big, but still I would say that Casper, Wyoming is more the hub than Grand Junction, and it always has been. But Grand Junction got pretty big, and there was a lot going on down there.
Right.
So we moved down there, and then we were doing everything you could think of in the oil business. I was just a contractor, and we were down there. Oh God, up till after the boom. That hurt.
Oh, okay.
You know, in the '80s when everything fell on this butt.
Right.
And it hurt everybody. Trying to think of the name of the company that really caused it down there. They were in the oil shale, mining and so forth, and all of a sudden they just pulled everything out and left and shut everything down, and everything just started going downhill from there. Because there was drilling going on around. Oh God, what Exxon, wasn't it?
Exxon. Down at Grand Junction.
Well, this is where it hurt us bad. Yeah, they were trying to mine that oil shale down there, and they had a lot of mines going, but they couldn't do it economically. And all of a sudden, they just pulled out. It was all over with, and that's about the time that. Well, they were the ones that caused the big downturn.
Right.
They really did. There was a lot going on. Anyway, we kept struggling around with what we were doing. And what I always found was, in my business, was I could go along and while it was busy and they were drilling and et cetera like that, we would stay busy working with those companies. And then when everything would shut down, then they'd start plugging the wells. So I had another outlet there.
Right.
But it was tough to make money in it because everybody always claimed they didn't have enough money to plug the wells, so they wanted me to do it cheap, see.
Right.
So that always went on.
Right.
But, and eventually I ended up in Pinedale, Wyoming. Went up there and started a company up there called Wind River Oilfield Service. And I was there at the start of the last boom.
When was that?
Well, that would have been in, the 90s, I guess. Let's see. Got hurt 15 years ago. Yeah, it'd have been the late 80s and into the 90s.
Oh, okay.
The gas business got real strong.
Right.
And there wasn't anything going on in Pinedale at the time, but you could see it was going to pick up.
Right.
And I stepped in there and got right in with the main company right away, and we built a big business up there.
Okay.
But I got hurt real bad on a rig accident. Down here, I had a rig go out on one of my wells to work on it, and they dropped the floor on me while they were trying to rig up, and it almost killed me. Probably should have.
Oh my goodness.
But it cut me up pretty hard, good on the head and so forth. I wasn't wearing a hard hat, which I was supposed to be. That'd have probably broke my neck if I'd had a hard hat on.
Right.
That's what I always tell them. But broke almost all my ribs, broke my leg, and really screwed me up good.
Wow.
And so, but we were working up in Pinedale, and I had a guy up there that I really liked, and I was going to put him into the business. So then I had to make him a full partner.
Right.
Let him take over. But we got real big up there, and we eventually sold out. But the boom was pretty much over up there when we sold out. And so from then on, I've been pretty much just doing a little consulting work or just fooling around and kind of retired.
Okay.
So I've been, you might say, retired for a long time. Not really. I don't like retirement. That's not fun.
No?
Not at all.
Oh, okay.
Well, I guess it is for some people. You know, I watched a lot of my friends that retired early in their maybe late 50s or so forth like that.
Oh, wow.
And they did okay, but they're all dead now. They just sat back and didn't, as far as I'm concerned, didn't really take real good care of themselves.
Right.
They should have stayed busy.
Right.
And I've tried to stay busy, but anyway, I was a long time getting over that accident. Because it did a lot of damage, but anyway, I'm back on my feet.
No, of course. Now, I'm sorry, if you don't mind me asking, what exactly was it that was dropped on you?
What they were doing, it was what we call a workover rig, a rig that comes in and works on the well. Say if you have a bad pump in the bottom or something like that, and you have to change it out.
Okay.
And so they bring in these rigs that you'll see going down the road and rig them up and do the work, pull all the tubing out of the hole and the rods and so forth that you have in there. And I'd call them in to work for me up there, and they and usually I run the job, but they'd gotten into a time when the insurance company was getting tougher, and they wouldn't let me do that. They would always insist on a pusher coming along, which is the guy that supervises everything. I mean, I'd still be his. I'd still tell him what to do, but, but he supervises people. And thank God they did that day, because if he hadn't have been there, I might have died. But it's what they were doing. They were picking this big derrick up, rigging up, and I was standing at the wellhead talking to the driller, or the operator of the rig, telling him what I wanted to do. And some way, they have a floor that the men work on, off of, that sets on the rig. And when the rig comes up, that floor will come over like this and set there so they can get up on there and do their work.
Okay.
And usually that's chained down, or some way it's tied off, so it don't come flopping over. Well, some way, evidently the little chains that was holding it had broke, and nobody knew it. And when they were bringing this derrick up, well, it was up in the air, that's right, and they had guy lines. The guy lines that hold the derrick were wrapped around it, and they were taking the guy lines off, and when they did, it released that floor, and I was standing there, and it came down, and it shoved me down to the ground about that far, just straight down. It really did. It was quite. But that operator, he had on a hard hat. He was a big guy. He took a pretty, well, he took a lot of the fall. Probably saved my life. But it didn't break him up so much as it bruised him. But anyway, I wasn't out long, and I was laying there, and there was a lot of snow on the ground, and they were trying to pack off the bleeding head and everything, and I looked at my leg, and it was laid over, broke, and I told those guys, I said, and you know, when you get hurt like that, you probably had a few hurts in your life that you really don't feel it for a while. The shock and everything sets in. And I remember telling that guy, I said, you know, if you guys would just pick me up and help me get in the pickup, you could drive me to town. That pusher said, don't you touch him. If they see, I had punctured lungs too. And
both of them?
No, just one. Thank God. But, and they hollered at him and said, he wants us to put him in the pickup. He said, don't you touch him. I'll remember that. Thank God he was there, because if they had him, they might have done some real damage then. And so then we finally got an ambulance in there, and they took me into Steamboat, because they had a brand new hospital in Steamboat then. And thank God they did that, because they had what do you call those crews of doctors that come in? I've seen it in the movies where you got doctors all around you. They're on call in case of something like that. And I had a doctor on every bit of my body. It was good. We didn't have it in Craig here. What do they call them? Anyway, and that was good too. So, but anyway, that it was just part of my life. That was probably the worst hurt I ever had. I've been burnt in rig fires that we had blowouts and so forth. And that's not nice neither.
No, I can't imagine.
But you know, I get a little upset with what I call over training for what they're doing out here now. When you go on a job, you got to have all of these safety meetings. And I'm a real firm believer in safety, but it has gotten so blown out of proportion that you can't even, they spend hours every day having these safety meetings, and I kind of think they ought to have some common sense meetings or something like that. To me, it gets overblown now.
I see what you're saying.
Today's world.
Yeah.
And and I will buy the safety part of it. Well, in fact, when I had my business up in Pinedale, we had to have, I think we had 2 safety people that went to every oil company's safety meetings. They had to go to at least some of them almost every day, and before we could ever go to work. And I watched this, and I wonder sometimes when the safety is, to me, it's overblown to the fact that some of these young people may not have to know how to work if they don't have a safety man standing there.
I see what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying?
Almost like a crutch.
Yeah, it's a crutch. And I know this for a fact that there's a lot of people I've talked to, and well, I have one son that's in West Virginia sitting on those big drilling rigs. He supervises that drilling out there, and some of the stories he's told about it. And like he said, you know, we got to accept the fact that we need the safety meetings and stuff, but he said it gets so overblown, some of these guys don't even want to come back.
Yeah.
They don't get nothing done.
Yeah.
But we still need it.
Yeah.
I kind of think the insurance companies get overblown on it too, and everything. But that's just a different world.
Right. So, what was it like? I realized that you were moving around and doing things when you're owning your own business when you moved to Grand Junction and everything. But in and around Craig and the area in general, what was it like owning a business through those booms and then the downtime? What was it like, those trends?
Well, it was scary.
Yeah.
Now, this part of the country has been known for what we call the Niobrara Formation out here, and they're doing a lot of drilling on it right now. And it's really a good oil and so forth. We have a lot of other formations that the companies produce oil from, but this one I've seen about 3 or 4. This will be about the 4th one. Little booms in what we call a Niobrara, where the companies would all of a sudden think they knew how to drill that, and here they would come, and they would get real busy around here, and there'd be several rigs running and so forth, and some of them might hit a good well, but I've seen several companies go broke trying to do this, so they would beat that Niobrara to death. And the reason I'm using the Niobrara is what's happening today. They'd finally get, well, a company, and there's some places real close here that it happened. They would bring in a big well, and I always call them accidents. And and then they'd say, "We know how to do it now," and they'd start drilling again, and never get anything but a little tiny well or something. They couldn't get it again, and it's a tough formation. So then they'd all move out, and everything quieted down. And then pretty soon somebody would come in and say, "We know how to do this," and here they'd come again. And I've seen that happen. This is the 4th time now.
Oh wow!
Shell Oil is in here claiming they know how to do it, and I still haven't seen any real results that look good. But there's another company here, a small company out of Denver, that's having good results. But they operate completely different for Shell, and they seem to be having some good results. So I don't know how long this one's going to last. The thing that bothers me about this one is the fact that Shell brings most of their contractors with them when they come.
Oh, okay.
And whereas there ought to be more local contractors working for them. And that was their big thing. They always told us, we're going to use the local people. Well, they don't. But it takes a lot of clout to get into their hoops and go to work for them. I mean, it takes a lot. So they've got these other companies that, well, there's one company that actually is stationed, their main office in California, and they're in here doing a lot of the work, and we have locals that could do it. And so that hurts.
So decreased opportunity.
Yeah, except for the fact that Shell Oil has spent a lot of money here. But an awful lot of it goes out of here, and some of it stays. And there's been a lot of ranchers and so forth around here. Got a lot of money for their leases and so forth.
Right.
So it isn't all bad. But back in the older days, when the companies would come in and they would use all the locals they could, it was easier, it was better.
Right.
And so everybody was happy they were making money. And then, of course, when the downtimes came, then we all got out and struggled to do anything we could.
Right.
I always stayed in my business. I operated a lot of wells for companies, and that was good because I could slow my force down, and yet I could go operate the wells, pump them for them. That's what we called it.
Okay.
And maybe had 2 or 3 men on my payroll helping do that, so we'd slip on through the bad times and then get back into good times and then hire more people.
Right.
And see, we used to have Texaco here, and they had some big fields out south between here and Minker. And I did a lot of work for them.
For Texaco?
Yeah. They used to have a refinery here also.
Oh.
And the refinery shipped a lot of oil out of here on the freight, on the rail.
Right.
But no, there was a refinery here. Now, I was still fairly young when the refinery finally shut down here, but I remember it. But they shut that refinery down. But Texaco stayed a long time, and Texaco was a tough company to work for, but still, I got along with them fine. I get along with people. I suppose that's what you need to do is get on friendly terms with those people and so forth.
Right.
That's the way it works in any business, really.
Right.
But that we've had we've had booms and busts. Well, I have a little story to tell you about an uncle of mine that came from Seattle, and he made a lot of money out there. He had some sort of bulk plant type deal where he sold different types of gasoline and stuff like that. But anyway, he made a lot of money.
Right.
So he was looking around, this has been a long time ago, on where he wanted to move to. And he wanted to come here because of this beautiful country out here.
Right.
But he said, I studied it and studied it, and he said, the problem with the Rocky Mountains is they have too many booms and busts.
Right.
Ups and downs. And he wanted to go someplace where it was pretty level.
Right.
And God, he looked all over the country. He said, towns in Texas and every place. He finally ended up in Las Vegas.
Oh, wow.
And he ended up at a motel there. I can't say his motel was completely legitimate. It was used for a lot of things. But, it made him a fortune.
Wow.
Because he was in the downtown area. And eventually they bought him out and everything.
Right.
And but he did. He told me, he said, I really studied it hard. He said, there's no way I could have made it in the Rocky Mountains.
Right.
He said, you're up one day and down the next. And the ranching and farming around here is the same thing. It's always been that way.
Really?
Oh yeah. That they're up and down, but they survive.
Right.
But like last year, we had such a dry year, and probably from the year before too, where a lot of the ranchers were having to sell off their cattle and everything. And,
wow.
And now we got a beautiful year right now.
Yeah, that's what everyone said. It was very raining this year.
Yeah, so I don't know how it's going to turn out. Cattle may not be a good price because there's so many of them on the market out there from last year.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
I'm not a rancher or a farmer. I'm related to them and stuff, but listen to them all the time. But that's a tough business. It always has been out here.
Right.
But there's some ranchers that have made it big time. But they knew how to do it. And but it's the same thing in our business, the oil and gas business, and it's most anything. I'm trying to but I wouldn't leave here.
Right.
And I've been all over the United States.
Right.
And I can't think of a better place to live.
Okay. So you do, I mean, it's apparent you do really like living in Craig.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Of course, you know, a lot of people always want to go home.
Right.
That's a little tough for you.
Yeah.
I shouldn't laugh at that, but
no, that's all right.
But back to what we were talking about.
Yeah.
I've known a lot of what you call army brats and stuff, and they were sharp kids. They really were.
Yeah.
They'd been educated in different countries and so forth.
Right.
And they were way ahead of us on a lot of things.
I mean, it does give you a little bit of insight in how people live everywhere, and that's why I think that, you know, myself and my partner, she'll be here not next week but the week after to help with these. That's why we find it interesting. It's just, you know, figuring out how different communities come together and see how these communities have grown.
Yeah, I think you know, when the power plant came in, I used to try to keep my people through the winter months. I always tried to find something for them to do.
Right.
So I'd have plenty of people in the summer to take off work and to work out in the oil field and so forth.
Right.
And the power plant came in, the coal mining started, and a lot of the people that I kept all winter quit me and went to work out there.
Right.
Well, it really didn't make me mad, and a lot of them, almost every one of them, went ahead and made something themselves. But they had to work their way up and so forth. And I couldn't blame them because they paid better. See, I couldn't meet that kind of a payroll. And I didn't blame them a bit. They had families to live, to raise and so forth. And so I always went along with it. But it did put a bind.
Right.
So, and I worried about the coal mining. You noticed our big drag lines up here on the mountain. When they first started that, I did some work up there for the people that come in originally. They waterize that mountain, so that when they dig the coal, the water wouldn't be in there.
Right.
And I thought that was a little bit. I wasn't sure if they ought to do that or not, but they had a purpose, and to get rid of that water so it would be drier than when they dug it.
Right.
And when you go up around Oak Creek and some of these other old mining towns, you'll still see a lot of the country that was left, and it looks like heck. You know, all you see is big cuts and coal and trash and everything. And at that time, I thought, oh my God, what's that mountain going to look like? Well, I got to give them a lot of credit. They did a good job up there.
Really?
Rehabbing and everything. If you look out there, you'll see a lot of that mountain. It's real green in places and a lot of brush. And a lot of that's already been dug up, and they reclaimed it. They did a good job.
Okay.
So, but that did worry me. I thought,
right.
What's that mountain going to look like after? No, they put it back.
So they've done a better job of keeping up the environment.
Yeah. Oh, I think they have
over the years.
And then see, I was in my business plugging wells. We had to put the locations and everything back.
Right.
And that was an environmental thing.
Right.
And now the coal companies, the way I understand it, they put so much money for every ton of coal back into a fund to do that. So the money's there. Well, the oil companies never really did that. They should have been putting like so much money for every barrel back.
Right.
So when it come time to start plugging wells, the oil companies always, I've heard that so much, they said, God, we don't have any money, you know. Well, we got to plug this well. And they have to plug because they're bonded to do it.
Right.
Yeah. And so they did a lot of skipping over stuff and so forth. And
wow.
Of course, we deal with the BLM. When I first started, the USGS was over the oil and gas business. And then eventually the BLM took it over.
What is the BLM?
How's that?
What is the BLM?
Bureau of Land Management.
Okay.
Yeah. And I happened to be down in Texas. I was working with the Texas Railroad Commission down there. I was plugging wells.
Right.
Well, I'd bought some rigs down there and was going to bring them back here. But I stayed down there for a while. And I liked those guys with the Texas Railroad Commission. And that's what they were doing out there. It's like our Colorado Oil and Gas Commission. They they were out there to supervise to make sure you did everything right. And they told me down there, they said one of the biggest mistakes you're making is letting the BLM take over, because they're more grassland people, and they're just supposed to be taking care of our lands out here.
Right.
And they don't know anything about it. And they were really right, in a way. Now, there's a lot of good people that work for the BLM, but it's like everything else. They get new people in there, and they're going to make a name for themselves.
Right.
And so here come the tough ones, and you soon educate them, but it takes a long time sometimes.
Right.
But so I went through all those phases, and I do a lot of work with the BLM. Almost went to work for them. Years ago, they asked me if I would, because they needed people that knew about the oil and gas.
Right.
And almost went to work for them.
Right.
And then I did a lot of work with the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. And I liked all of them. I had good luck with them.
Right.
Now, a lot of people don't, because they go out there with a chip on their shoulders, and they're going to, and you don't do that.
Right.
You better learn how to get along with those people.
Right.
Because they have a job, too. Even though they're the government. I guess that's the worst thing, being the government. You know, you're naturally not going to like that too well. But I always got along with all of them real good. We have a tougher commission today in the state of Colorado, and they're really making it rough on the little oil people like us, the little operators.
Right.
Yeah, they're awful.
What are they doing with that?
Well, they come up with all kinds of new regulations and so forth that we just, and everything's so expensive today. We might have a well out here that's making maybe 2 or 3 barrels of oil a day, and that's pretty good money.
Yeah.
But the commission could step in here and maybe slap a deal on you and say, hey, we don't like the way you're doing this today, and it costs you $30,000 to clean it up. Well, there you go. See, what's a little guy going to do?
Right.
Now, big people like Shell and so forth like that, they just throw the money out, and, I mean, they go do it.
Right.
And it hurts us little people. But so it's, but I've seen these games played before over the years, and sooner or later it tamed down.
Right.
But it hurts right now. It really does.
Oh, like right now.
Yeah, the little operators have a tough time trying to make any money.
Right.
And they're trying to do anything. I would like to see the time come back when we have small oil companies coming in here, drilling these wells.
Right.
But they can't afford to do it because with the environmental thing and the big companies like Shell in here spending the big bucks, they just can't do it. They can't afford to do it because the recovery isn't good enough to pay for, well, for instance, a $10 million well.
Right.
That's a lot of money, 10 plus. And I know everything's more expensive today, but I remember not too many years ago when they could drill the same wells for maybe $200,000.
Wow.
So it's changed that much.
That's a lot.
Well, it has. And there's a whole lot of other things that go into it, like our DOT. Everybody's involved, and so they just make it that much more expensive when you. But I will say one thing: I like the technology,
right,
and I like the change because there's a lot of new stuff out there that's come aboard in the last 10 years or so.
Right,
and it's great. It really is. And so I guess we just got to learn how to live with it and learn the new technology.
Well,
you know, I didn't know how to turn on a computer 4 years ago.
Really?
No. Yeah.
I mean, it's good to learn.
Well, I was hard-headed like a lot of, and I know a lot of people that, I even know school teachers who won't turn them on, that have retired. I'm serious.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that amaze me.
Right.
And I got to thinking about it, and I thought, you know, this is the world we live in today. I better learn how to do this.
Right.
So I've taken...
I have family members who said about the same thing.
Well, I've taken 2. Well, the first thing that happened to me, I'll tell you this story, was my wife was pretty fair at it. and she's the president of the volunteers at the hospital up here.
Oh,
And
okay.
Jan asked me a minute ago if she'd like to come down and talk to you all about the volunteers.
Yeah,
and stuff.
I'd love to hear that
Yeah.
too.
But anyway, I was up talking with one of the guys that she was sitting at the desk with up there, and everybody looked like a whiz on the computer to me, because I didn't. And he was telling me, he said, don't worry about it, just go home and just start it up. He said, you can't hurt it.
No.
Well, yeah, but I did find out you can. So I thought, well, that's okay. So I went home and I started, and I never got her computer turned on. And she used to let me read them emails.
Right.
I liked doing that, but she'd have to get them for me.
Right.
But I couldn't go no place. So I kept fooling with it, and I thought, well, I better shut this off. I shut every button I could find off. She came home, and I was out working in the garage, and I went in there and I said, you got the emails up yet? I want to read them. She said, no. She said, somebody hacked into my computer, and I'm trying to run all the firewalls and all that crap that computer people talk about.
Right.
And she said, and I thought, oh my God. I left. I went back out in the garage. And I don't know how long she was in there, but she finally came back. She went right straight to Bresnan, finally, and they come back and said it all happened on your computer. That's when she knew. Some way they traced it back.
Right.
That the computer had been the one that done it all.
Right.
I don't know how they did that, but
yeah.
Anyway, here she came. And she said, come here. You were messing with the computer. I said, yeah, I was. And she said, I'll show you how to start it and get the emails. That's all she would show me.
Okay.
So she went that far.
Right.
But that was dangerous. So I went along and I learned a little bit more myself. So then I went and took the dummies course. No, I went and I decided I was good enough to go to Ancestry.com and start my genealogy.
Oh, wow.
And then I found out how dumb I really was. So then I went.
Computers can be difficult.
Oh, boy. So then I took a course in genealogy. And then I found I still wasn't smart enough. So then I took a dummies course, on computer. And then I took a second dummies course. So I'm getting better all the time.
That's good.
But that was my introduction to the computer.
Okay.
But I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a world of information out there.
Yeah.
And
it's all at your fingertips of the computer.
yeah. And I am really amazed at the actual people I know that have retired from teaching and so forth that will not get a computer.
Yeah.
Why? What changed their minds?
I don't know.
I know it. It amazes me.
Yeah, I'm a high school teacher myself.
Yeah.
So I teach history, and using a computer in the classroom, especially their cell phones, it's always been something that the kids they're shunned for doing that. You turn your cell phone off in the classroom. But I find that it's a very useful tool because they can find things better than I can.
Oh.
I've been using a computer for quite some time, but they're much better than I am.
Yeah.
The younger they get, the better they are at it, it seems.
Well, I've definitely found that out, but it wouldn't take much to be better than me. But I enjoy it, and I have a lot of grandkids and stuff like that that are ready to help me in a minute.
That's good.
And I have done a lot of the genealogy and that.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah.
See, I have ancestors that homesteaded here.
In Craig.
Actually out of Craig on what we call Elkhead.
Oh, okay.
It'd be north and a little bit east of here.
Okay.
Well, I had a great-grandfather that homesteaded up there,
Mm-hmm.
and he'd fought in the Civil War.
Oh, wow.
And he was an honor guard at Lincoln's funeral.
Wow.
And I have all that.
So he fought for the North.
Yeah. And he didn't come here and homestead till he was in his 80s.
Oh,
if you can imagine that. But the reason he did that was his daughter, my grandmother, and my granddad were out here homesteading, and he didn't like my granddad, and he thought he might mistreat his daughter and my grandmother.
Right.
So he came out to watch over him. So he homesteaded.
Oh,
then he turned around and went back to his wife had died, my great grandmother, earlier on, and he went back to Kansas to. They had military homes, and places, probably hospitals or whatever, where they could take care of the people.
Right.
Back in those days.
Right.
That had fought in the Civil War and stuff. And so that's where he stayed till just before he died, and then he went home to Missouri and died. But I was always amazed, and I followed his footsteps pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of work to do to find it.
Right.
And do you do genealogy?
I've dabbled with it, but not that much.
Well, like me growing up, my folks didn't know much about their families.
Right.
And so they never, and if they told me stories, I didn't listen. Typical.
Right. Right.
And so I've really had my eyes opened up, and it's been a lot of fun.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
That's really cool that you found that.
But I got papers piled up all over the place.
Yeah, that happens quickly with that.
Well, it's intimidating.
Right.
It really is. You get into it and you don't want to quit.
Yeah.
So I have to really watch that. And then my dad came out. He actually came out from Oklahoma.
Mm.
His mother and his stepdad had moved out here and homesteaded also.
Right.
That'd be the other grandmother. But they homesteaded out on what we call the Great Divide, and but they left my dad back there with an aunt, and he didn't get along with them very good. But so they put him on a train with a tag around his neck. He was 13, but at 13, people were men back then.
Right.
Boys were men.
Right.
But and he went into Rollins up here north, and he was picked up by a wagon, a horse team that was carrying freight back and forth to Rollins.
Okay.
That's how he got here.
Wow.
And then he went to herding sheep here for some of the sheep men as a kid. He was mostly a camp tender and so forth. And he did those things, and then eventually he ended up in this Craig Heidenberg, Craig Steele's salvage business and so forth.
Wow.
But so that's the way people out here started.
That's really interesting.
Well, it is that people were poor too. The homesteaders were really poor, and this was tough. Actually, this is a good country in a sense, but it's still a tough country to farm.
Yeah.
And even back then, I know my grandmother. I've still got a lot of old letters and so forth. My mother saved. And you'd almost make you cry reading some of them, but they never give up.
Right.
And so it was really tough. And I know when my mother passed away here, the preacher made the remark. He said they grew up dirt poor out there, but they didn't know it because everybody else was.
Right. They couldn't see the differences.
No.
Yeah.
And so people were. But they had to be tough.
Right.
They really had to be tough
for sure.
Come out here. And and the oil business, I'm bouncing around a lot on you.
No, you're fine. No.
I did a lot of studying the history on it because I ended up on a lot of the old oil wells that originally were drilled around here.
Right.
Plugging them or working them over and so forth to make them better or make wells out of them.
Right.
And it always amazed me the first oil wells that were drilled around here and gas wells.
Right.
And I think it was as late as 1928 or so forth, or along there, that they were getting the wells out south. And Craig didn't have gas. They started laying gas lines into Craig.
Right.
So they could have natural gas here.
Right.
And then I went through a lot of the stuff that Jan has up here, and I got tickled at a lot of the cartoons during that time in the paper, where they were showing these guys jumping up and down with briefcases of money. Everybody's going to get rich.
Right.
See, so that was the first oil boom here.
Right.
But and I really love to talk about that.
Yeah.
And later, the guy that brought in the biggest well in Rangeley, I knew him.
Oh.
He actually, he was just working on the rig, or he was drilling on it, and the thing blew in on him. But
wow.
Yeah, it did, and it was a big well.
Right.
That was one of the discovered wells in Rangeley. But later he had his own rig, and he did quite a bit of drilling for my dad. And I was around him a lot, and he was really interesting. You know, he'd been really through it, and he knew the business. But well, through everything that I looked up and read about and so forth, it was a tough business.
Right.
It really was. But it was the only thing going on.
Right.
And I don't know when the next boom was for sure, but it was off and on. You know, every few years here it'd come again.
Right. That's constant. It's still going on.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. But you sure got your slow times.
Yeah.
And you wonder when it's going to come back.
Right. So you would say this is more a slow time?
No. We actually have a boom going on around the country right now in the oil and gas business.
Oh, okay.
And with Shell Oil out here, we have quite a bit going on here,
right,
in a sense. But Shell's the big one, and they aren't, to me, they aren't producing anything. But they own so many leases that other people really aren't coming in. Mm-hmm. Plus, it's so expensive to drill this particular formation.
Right.
Now, there's quite a bit of stuff going on around Vernal, Utah. Mm-hmm. And Grand Junction's slow, which kind of surprised me. And then north up into Wyoming, there's some areas up there that's really hot. Now, have you ever been to North Dakota?
I have not.
Have you heard about the big oil boom up there?
Briefly, my grandmother's from North Dakota.
So. Oh, is that right where we're at?
You got me. I'm not sure exactly.
You got any idea part of the state? Or?
I know it's the eastern part, and then she moved to Minneapolis very soon after. But she has mentioned things about it.
Well, I just got back from up there.
Oh, okay.
My ex-partner, now this is a real oil boom. Mm-hmm. My ex-partner's up there running a big company.
Okay.
It does all kinds of contracting work, and they're actually from out of Louisiana. Okay. And they're spread out all over the country, but he runs the whole North Dakota outfit for him up there.
Wow.
He's a sharp guy, a hard worker. And I went up to see him, and I've been up there last year. I went up to see him, and it was a madhouse.
Right.
Like Williston, for instance, would go in Walmart store, and they would bring in pallets of materials and stuff like that. They'd never get off the pallets. People were jerking that stuff off there. Wow. I mean, they didn't have time to shelve them.
Right.
And there was a lot of traffic and rigs everywhere you looked. And this is on, of course, at Williston, just out of Montana, just on Williston on the west side, and it spreads. I'm not real sure how well. It even spreads over on the eastern side. The old oil fields do. But this time, when I was up there, I never seen so much truck traffic on those little roads. It's just truck after truck after truck. And you got to be careful. They're all two-lane highways. Yeah. Except for Interstate 2, which runs through there. You know, Interstate 2, I think, runs the full length of the United States almost up there.
Oh, okay.
You're okay. No.
That's all right.
And it's scary because these guys are going 24 hours a day, and everywhere you go up there, that's all you run into. You just got to be really careful. I went in the Walmart store, and they got signs everywhere. And the Walmart store up there their parking lot's probably 5 times bigger than ours out here.
Wow.
Oh, it's huge. And that place was packed. And I wanted to get a few groceries. And I went in there. It was scary. And all the workers in there. And I had to use the bathroom, which was a mistake. All the urinals, everything was out of use, you know. And, and it was just a mess. And your Walmarts aren't like that ordinarily. But so I came out and called my partner. I said, "Where can I go buy groceries?" Yeah. And he laughed. He said, "You must be at Walmart." I said, "Yeah." He said, "I should have told you not to go there." And so I found an Albertsons or something. They don't have big food markets up there. You know, they're all little towns. Right. And I love it up there. I really do. But it's absolutely amazing, the traffic on all those roads up there, and it's scary. And I got back, and my partner called me the next day, and he said, pick up the paper. He said, get on the computer and go to Stanley, North Dakota accident. And I'd spent the day up there in Stanley because I'm on the board of directors of a company up there that, as an advisor, they don't listen to me, but it don't make any difference. They put me on there. And I'd been there all day, and I pulled that up, and 3 large semis and a car had hit and had a wreck, and one of them was an oil truck, and it burned up. There's 4 people killed, 3 wounded, 3 injured, and one of them was actually from Stanley, and it was an article, the article from a paper, and the paper said, this happens so much up here that people just shrug their shoulders and say, well, there was another one. You know, I mean, that's what it's like. Now, that's an oil field.
Right.
We don't want that down here.
No, right.
Absolutely.
Right.
You don't want it anywhere. But that's the way it is, and it isn't gonna quit. They're finding new production up there all the time.
Right.
And I've got a nephew that works for a big company up there. He loves it because he's well taken care of. See?
Right.
And then I've got, like, my one son. He ended up out in West Virginia on those big. They're drilling big gas wells back there.
Oh, okay.
And he's one of the top dogs on that rig. He's got an office on there. No way I could afford an office like that. He's setting up on a drilling rig and watching computers and stuff and watching everything that's going on.
Right.
And he loves it. And they pay all his expenses, flying him back and forth to Grand Junction and everything. Right. So, quite a job.
Yeah, that sounds like it.
So, we have a lot going on in the oil and gas business all over the United States.
Okay.
Really. And I don't know how long it's going to last. But I think this time it'll be around a while.
Oh, really?
I don't think it's going to. Well, I've always said that before, and then sooner or later it stops.
Right.
Yeah. I've run you around in a lot of circles here.
Oh, no, it's not a problem. If we want to go to a different topic, we can talk about what we were going to talk about before, just recreation, downtime, weekends. What would you do to unwind?
Well, if you're in the oil field, back in the days before drinking and driving got so tough,
right.
We went to the bars.
Oh, okay.
But that's what we had.
Right.
We would go out in the field to work. Now, we never had cell phones. We never had anything like that.
Right.
And we would have to figure out everything we were going to need out there in the field the night before and have it ready to go the next day. And when you went out there, you were on your own. I mean,
right.
We might travel out 100 miles, and anyway, 50 to 100 and so forth. And so you had enough stuff with you to do your job. You didn't get on a cell phone and have somebody meet you with stuff and so forth.
Right.
That's what they're able to do today, which
right.
is great in a way. But they're on the cell phone all the time. But and then at night we'd come in, and the pushers, the rig people, and the people, whoever you were working for, and you might meet at the local bar down here, and you do all your business right there.
Right.
And it was kind of a fast life. It really was.
Right.
But that was basically the way it worked.
Okay.
And over the years, there was a lot of stuff went on in those bars that is typical with any business, where people were getting things under the table and this and that and everything, you know. And something I did like, and it was after in the 80s and so forth, the oil companies started sending out letters that they better not catch anything like that going on again. So they started putting a stop on that, which
right.
is good, because I've seen it abused bad
right.
over the years. But no, we would unwind. Of course, I love to hunt and fish, and I have a cabin up here in the mountains, and we used to try to go do those kind of things, but I spent a lot of years working 7 days a week. I'd let my people off, and I don't know how many Thanksgiving Day dinners and stuff like that I missed because I'd let all my people off and I'd go do the work, like checking the wells.
Right.
And so forth. So my wife wasn't too excited about it.
Right.
But it still worked.
So not a lot of downtime, but
Yeah.
fishing and hunting.
Yeah.
There seems to be a general consensus. People enjoy that.
Especially in this part of the country.
Yeah.
And we'd take vacations, travel once in a while, maybe fly down to New Mexico or Mexico or different places.
Right.
We'd take off, but it seemed like when you own a company, you better be there.
Right.
Running that baby.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and so we didn't get as much time off as like a lot of the people who worked for me did.
Right.
But no, there was a lot of drinking went on.
Mhm.
But it wasn't done out in the job or anything like that.
Right.
We made sure of that. But that's kind of the way things went all the
Okay.
time.
Okay.
And for a lot of years it went like that.
Right.
Everybody would meet at the bar to get ready to go
Mhm.
the next day.
Right.
And then I laughed at this one petroleum engineer out of Denver. He just passed away just recently.
Hmm.
I walked in for coffee early in the morning, and there he is on the payphone calling somebody and asking what he said, what he told everybody to do last night because he couldn't remember. That's how bad it got sometimes. I still laughed at him for years over that.
Yeah.
And and then we'd go to work early, and
Mm.
you know what fascinated me years ago was when I had a lot of farm and ranch kids working for me, and most of the local kids were good workers, but a lot of them had been on farms and ranches. But I had a lot of ranchers and so forth working to make up to supplement their income from the ranch because
Right.
they just wasn't making it out there. But they and those guys would come in at say 6 o'clock in the morning, and you knew that before they ever left the ranch, they'd already did a lot of chores.
Mhm.
So those guys are up, they're working hard, and they came in, and then you could send them out to go to work, and you never really had to follow most of them
Mhm.
very much. You still had to go along and check on them and everything, but those guys knew how to work,
Right.
and they knew how to handle themselves.
Mhm.
And they'd get the job done, come in at night, and they went home, and they still worked at home. They were hard workers. They really were. And I've seen a lot of that over the years, but that has died down. And it's kind of sad
Right.
because we don't get the quality of worker we used to.
Mhm.
And it's too bad. And I'm pretty firm on that.
Right.
And they all need to have all kinds of safety advice and so forth like that, which still isn't that bad, but the guys that I used to work had some common sense.
Right.
And they learned that on the ranch by getting beat around. But no, that was actually a great time working people.
Right.
Really good.
Yeah.
Really were.
So discipline in the workforce has kind of fallen.
Oh, absolutely. Evidently it's almost impossible to fire somebody anymore.
Mhm.
And things like that. And you could get sued for firing somebody even though you had a good legitimate reason to do it.
Mhm.
And I see a lot of that, but it's just not the same game to
Mhm.
me. I think in a sense we're hurting ourselves. Well, we got this big thing on the border deal, and the Mexicans coming in and so forth. And I've worked with a lot of Mexicans, and I worked with a lot of them in Pinedale. And I was always amazed. It was about half scary to go out there and you didn't want somebody out there looking for green cards because you might not have anybody working that day.
Mhm.
Well, down in Texas one time, I had a foreman down there. I left when I bought these rigs down there, and I left him there for a while, and he run them. He called me up one day and he said, Bill, he said that one rig's down. He said, whatever you call those guys that work the border, came over and they took them all. They arrested them all and took them back across the border. Well, I didn't have a crew. They were all illegals. I didn't know it, and I never went out to the rigs too much. When I go with him, he said, I better go because you can't speak Spanish and I can't. And so it didn't surprise me, but the next day they were all back. They crossed back over. And we've had incidents like that around here. And when I was up in Pinedale, we were getting a lot of Mexican workers up there, but they were hard workers. And this is, I guess, what I would call kind of changing times. I think a lot of our regular force was getting lazy. And these guys would pick up a shovel or a pick and go to work. And, you know, and I don't like to see people have to pick up a shovel or a pick because that's hard work, but sometimes you got to. And didn't bother those Mexicans a bit because they were hungry. And so I'd like to see them, but I want to see it legal. I mean, we're getting too many bums over here too. And that, I think the drug business and stuff like that relates back to it. But
to the more
yeah,
people in general coming in and out of Craig.
Oh yeah, and
all sorts of people.
See, when I grew up here, we had one or two Mexican families. That's all we ever had, and they were here. Went through school with them and everything, and they were originally here born and raised here. You might say maybe their folks came from some other places, but I didn't know what a colored person was. We had some in Hayden that worked in the mines. I know I used to have to play football against one that was there in Hayden. God, he was tough. He was a good ball player, but so when I got in the service, that was a shock.
Oh, right.
See,
it's more multi-racial there.
Yeah, and but I got along with all of them fine, and but I got an education out of it too. One hell of an education. Yeah. See, when I was in the service, is about the time Martin Luther King was doing his marching and everything, and it hit us pretty hard over there because all of a sudden we had to, well, the colored guys could go up to the old man and say he was racial prejudice, and they'd bust your butt and give him a rank. That went on. I've seen a lot of that. And that was the time when all that was going on. And I didn't really know what to think of that, other than it wasn't fun. But they closed our base down over there in England, and Eisenhower did, because we were actually the colored people had one town to go to, and we went to our town. We was in Margate on the Sea there, where the base was, and they killed a lot of people. There was killings going on in their town more so. You know, what do you say? And so eventually they had enough problems with the English government and so forth. They shut our base down, and I was on that base. There was only about 5 people left when I left there. I was in charge of ground power, electric generator sets and stuff like that, and all that kind of stuff. And what Eisenhower did was send in a colored major to shut the base down. And I was always amused, and I liked the guy, I really did. He was tough. He might have been a colonel. But anyway, the first thing he did was start busting the colored guys, the ones that were the complainers that made rank. Boy, did he take them down fast. Oh, yeah. Boy, were they crying the blues. But that's all that went on. It was a racial thing. And I stayed away from it. I knew I had enough sense, too, because I didn't know, you know. Coming from Craig, Colorado, what do I know about the world out there? But I learned.
Right.
How did we get off on that?
I'm not sure.
Well,
we're talking about workforce.
Yeah.
Just,
And Well, like I said, the workforces back a long time ago were absolutely great because they all knew how to work. They had to work.
Right.
And
like you said, they were all poor, but they didn't really know they were poor.
Well, true.
Poor.
But you know, and most of them had maybe a little farm or a ranch or something. They were trying to keep it alive, and well, even my father-in-law, he ended up being a pretty big rancher. But I know he used to work for the county some, and to keep enough income coming in to make sure he was paying his taxes and stuff like that. And then he even worked for me at one time. We got into a deal where we were grinding up sawdust to go out to the rigs. And so he wanted to work. I said, okay, come on in. And I turned the crew over to him. Boy, he worked it. You know, he was a rancher, and he was tough. But he was good, too. He was a good man.
Yeah.
And but we just had a whole different workforce back then. I get the feeling sometimes that, and you're in the younger generation, that we run into a lot of situations where we get educated kids and so forth that come out here and they want to start with your job. They don't want to start at the bottom and learn. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of that.
Yes.
And that's not good.
Right. I know what you mean. They want the higher paying jobs.
Well, sure. And they could get them, but they need to work for them. And we got a lot of smart kids out here, very very intelligent. I like that. All you get in the news is about all these thugs running around and this and that. But no, there's a lot of good people out there, and a lot of kids that. Well, I've got a lot of grandkids that have good jobs. They all work, and they're hard workers. I'm proud of them for that.
Right.
And then I think I got one or two that don't want to work. I'm not too proud of them, but anyway, that's just life.
Right. Is there anything else you want to add? And if
I probably skipped over a million things, but that's
all
okay.
Right. Well,
no, maybe I could think about this for a while, and then we could sit down and talk again or something.
Yeah, that's not a problem at all.
And,
here, what I'll do is I'll